Hello, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint pumpkin, wagon, gnome with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. Let's go over brushes and colors. There's only 2 brushes for this, which makes things a little bit more simpler. A 3/4 flat and then number 4 round. These are Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. Both of these come in the same pack. There's an optional use for paint pens. I use the black and white Poscas just for the lettering on the wagon. And there are quite a bit of colors for this. Mars Black, Titanium White. These are Liquitex Basics colors, by the way. Phthalo Blue is only used for the pants of the gnome, so you don't need a lot of Phthalo Blue. Burnt Umber. Unbleached titanium and yellow oxide, cadmium red medium hue, and Hooker's green hue permanent. And then a little bit of yellow is used just for the sunflowers, so you don't need a lot of that yellow. So you don't need a lot of yellow or blue, but the other colors we do use quite a bit of. Let's go ahead and get started. And also, if you're drawing this with me, you'll be using pencil eraser. There is an optional template for this that you can trace onto your canvas right now. I'll have the template is linked to this tutorial if you like using the template. Otherwise, you can draw this with me. I'm not going to draw the gnome first. I'm actually just going to draw the horizon line for this. And it's just a simple little hill at the 3-inch mark on the left and 4-inch mark on the right, so it curves up, and that's just the line that's going to divide the sky and the ground. If you're working on a bigger canvas, you'll just kind of change the proportions or estimate that. Just a simple line across that's kind of like a wavy hill line. And I'm loading my paint palette with the colors that we'll be using for this golden sky. So titanium white, unbleached titanium, and yellow oxide. I challenged myself to not do a blue sky this time for my painting. I gravitate towards blue skies, but I wanted to do something different this time. So this is titanium white with a little bit of unbleached titanium loaded on my 3/4 flat brush. And I'm going to start in the middle of the painting, and I'm just going to paint this big kind of blob. Your white is going to blend with the beige color to make a very light cream color right in the middle. And we're going to make this sky where it kind of radiates around that center blob and just gets darker, more vibrant on the edges. So after you're done painting that kind of middle blobbed area, grab just the beige now and blend that in. And I'm doing these kind of choppy, expressive paint strokes, and I'm blending those colors right onto the canvas. So you're going to get streaks of different colors in there. You want to leave your center very bright, and then it's going to start getting darker and more yellow as we work our way out. So let's not introduce that yellow just yet. A little bit more beige, a little bit more white in there. And then let's grab our yellow oxide. So I'm going to start on the edge, and you can see how dark this is compared to our beige, and then grab my beige and let that blend. So you don't want to do too much of that yellow oxide. It'll take over fast because it's a very strong color. But that's kind of the technique that we're doing. And then we're going to continue this yellow oxide in the corners. Grab your beige, let that blend with it. Short, angled, choppy paint strokes. You can grab more white and blend that in. And then let's get this yellow and get that into the upper left corner, lower left corner, and then grab your beige and blend that in with your yellow. It's okay to overlap your sky colors over that horizon line that we drew. Just as long as you can sort of still see that line, you should be fine. If you're using the traceable, I did put a note in the written instructions that you can trace it first and then outline with a Sharpie, and it will show through this first layer of paint if you outline it with a Sharpie. The other option is to follow the steps that I'm doing, get the background, and after this we'll be doing the grass too, and then transfer your traceable over that first layer of color, and that also works. So I'm getting more of this light color and adding that kind of in the middle. We don't want to keep working this color. I'm going for that kind of choppy brush stroke look where the colors don't blend all the way. So when you're done with the sky, you do not need to let it dry. You can go on to this next step. We're going to do the green ground area layer next. And you'll need the color Hooker's Green Hue loaded onto your paint palette. I'm going to take this green and actually add yellow oxide into the green. So that's that dark yellow that's on my paint palette. Rinse the brush, but actually if that brush doesn't get rinsed off all the way, that's fine because we're using those colors anyway. So green, grab a little bit of that yellow oxide and it creates a really pretty kind of golden green color. And if you want, you can even add a little bit of beige to it. I'm just going to mix this up and I'm going to start on the bottom. Bring this all the way across, left and right paint strokes. And we're going to kind of make this darker on the bottom and lighter on the top. So I'm going to approach the top and get a little bit more of that darker green and add some towards the bottom. I'm going to grab some beige and mix a little bit of more beige into that color. That's going to lighten that color. I bring this up. So we want our green grass area to kind of get lighter in the background. I'm going to load titanium white onto my paint palette and mix white into that color. Maybe a little bit more of that yellow oxide. We have a very light, pretty golden green color. Bring this up, a little bit of white at the top. Bring this up all the way to the sky area. You can use the end of your brush to really kind of define that horizon line we drew earlier. And if you lost your line, that's okay. You can just kind of draw a new line with your brush. Taking that white and blending that up into the rest of that. You don't want it to blend with the sky. You should see a very distinct line where the sky ends and where that green line starts. We don't want that to blend together. So I'm just gently blending this green area. And you see how it's just a little bit darker on the bottom, and that's kind of what we want. So now you want to wait for everything to dry before going to this step. So you can choose to do the traceable now. So print it out, put graphite paper underneath and trace the gnome. I'm not going to use the tracer. I'm going to draw. I've been trying to draw everything lately instead of using the tracer. But you can do either or if you want. Also, my printer hasn't been working, so I haven't been printing the tracers. I am going to draw this gnome first, and I like to start with the nose. For me, that's just a good starting point. And it's a very simple kind of oval shape. You want to think about the positioning of this. He's standing on the grass area, so the nose would be kind of going diagonally up in the middle of the sky. And then from there, you can draw a side mustache shape, and this is going diagonally towards the left. It's like an extended teardrop shape. And then the beard, big curve that curves down and then kind of goes flat in the middle of the grass area. So imagine he's going to be pulling the wagon, so his beard would be kind of flowing towards the left because he's walking towards the right. Our hat's going to be at an angle because this is a profile view of the gnome, so he's facing to the right. So our hat, we can do the bottom part of the hat. So this usually hugs the top of the nose, and then part of the mustache. So I'm just going to do a little shape that looks like that. Hat's going kind of slanted, and then the point of the hat is going towards the right. So it goes up and points down as you're sketching this, little sketch marks at a time. And then we have his arm going diagonally down. He's going to be holding the wagon. It's a little kind of rectangle shape going down. Very simple mitten shape with thumb down. And then a little bit of texture on the beard. The fun thing about drawing gnomes is the beard gets to cover up everything else. We don't have to worry about the torso or anything. We just see the arms, the legs. Usually we don't even see legs, but this one I'm going to do this knee is going to be bent forward. So I'm doing a leg right now, and that's bending forwards. Again, take your time, little sketches at a time. And then you can kind of sketch his little shoe. It's going to be facing to the right side of the canvas. A little curve in the front, flat part for the sole of the shoe, and then the heel. And then you can always make the pant leg kind of cover more of it so you don't have to see the upper part of the boot. So the other leg is actually going to be going a little bit diagonal, but I'm going to draw the shoe first. So I'm doing the exact same kind of shoe, the curved part in the front, heel, and then our pant leg. So a little bit diagonally to the right. And then our beard, we'll do some texture on the right, so like zigzag lines that are sticking out of that initial curved line we did. And when we paint this in, that beard's going to be covering up a lot of the pant legs, so we can kind of fix that later. I'm going to do the handle for the wagon, so that we can just do a very simple diagonal line and then kind of sketch this wagon. So I recommend using a ruler for the wagon just because we have parallel straight lines that need to happen. And so sometimes I like to kind of sketch out that shape first and then go back with a ruler. I'm doing a little rectangle for the wagon handle, so that goes kind of under the mitten. And then if we need to change the angle of the wagon handle, we can. So I'm going to change my angle, actually. Sorry for the shaky camera. So this is, I'm going to have it go down a little bit lower. You can always adjust the angle of the handle, and that kind of depends on where the arm and hand ended up for your gnome drawing. So I'm going to get my ruler and do a rectangle shape. So my wagon top starts up here just above the horizon line. And then it's going to go down this way, down this way. So it's maybe like 1.5 inches tall. It kind of curves and goes this way. And then a little rim at the top that kind of sticks out on both sides. Pumpkin. So we can do like a very simple apple shape. So it kind of looks like maybe at the top of a heart almost. And then we have stem, and then the pumpkin kind of ridges. I do these lines. I start in the middle with kind of an oval line, and then I do curved line on each side. And then we can see two parts, two little bumps in the back. I'm going to adjust the handle one more time. It's actually going to go down here. Erase the lines we don't need. And then adjust the little rectangle handle. And now we need to get the wheels in. And I'm going to use a ruler to also take this. Shortened the wagon just a little bit. And then 2 circles for the wheels. So you can start with 1 circle, and if you have a hard time making them both even, you can take the ruler and you can kind of do these guidelines. So that's the height of where the circle is going to be. So that line I just drew was the top of the circle, and then the bottom of the circle. So that way we can get this circle on the right to be the same height. Because they both fit inside of those lines. And then you can do little vertical lines going up, or little diagonal lines going up, and then a tiny circle inside of that. So just one little circle inside of both of the circles. When we paint this in, we'll paint it so there's actually 3 circles. So there's going to be black, white, and red on the wheel. That is it for the drawing portion of this, and we are going to move along to the next step, and we are first going to paint the gnome's nose. So I am going to load unbleached titanium on my paint palette. You'll also need burnt umber. Take your number 4 round brush. Grab a little bit of the beige. I'm actually going to make this more of like a rosy color. So I'm adding red to my palette. This is Cad Red Medium. Take a little bit of red, mix that into the beige. You don't need a lot of red for that. And a little bit of brown. So little dots of that color to darken it. And then take that color, it's kind of like a dark reddish beige color, and paint the nose. It's going to start out dark before it becomes lighter, but it should have enough contrast to show up against the sky. So if it's not showing up, I would recommend adding a little bit more brown into your color just to darken it a little bit more. And we're going to let that dry before doing anything else to the nose. So that was very simple, just paint the oval nose shape. And then we're going to do the hat. So the bottom rim part of the hat is with yellow oxide. So that's what I loaded my brush with. So kind of outline your shape and fill it in with your yellow oxide. We'll be using this number 4 round brush for the rest of the painting, by the way. If you need to switch to like a much smaller round brush for some of the smaller details, you can. So I'm just filling this bottom part of the hat in. It hugs the top of the nose. And without rinsing the brush, I'm going to grab brown. So burnt umber is a very dark brown color. And I'm going to start doing this part of the hat. So just kind of outline the edge of the hat. Add a little bit of water in there. just to kind of boost the flow of that brown. Grabbed a little bit of yellow oxide and brown. That gives it more of kind of this golden color, but also gives my brown a little bit more variation. And I like to paint my paint strokes going in a curved direction with the flow of the hat, and that gives it a little bit more form when you paint your paint strokes going that direction. And the hat itself actually points up a little bit at the end. I grab a little bit of beige and kind of have fun here. Maybe blend a little bit of beige on the right side. Give it a little bit of highlight already. Maybe blend this in a little bit, and this is all wet, so I'm actually gonna let everything dry before detailing the hat anymore. I'm gonna switch to the beard next. So I am going to take titanium white and Mars black. This is Mars black I'm loading on my paint palette. We want to start with a medium gray color. Even if the beard is going to look like it's going to be white, we need to start dark and then layer on our white after this dries. So mix about 2 parts white to 1 part black to make a medium gray color. Use your 4 round brush, and let's start with the mustache. So short little paint strokes at a time. Outline the shape of the mustache, and it's angling backwards. For the beard, I'm actually going to lighten the gray just a tad, just so this shows up like a slightly lighter color than the mustache. So I'm going to kind of outline the shape of this. It flows down and to the right. And you want to do your paint strokes kind of with the flow of the beard, so the hairs are curving and going towards the left. And again, this is going to be darker than what it's actually going to turn into. We'll layer on lighter colors. I'm going to take my beige and white and go back over the nose. Assuming this is dry, and mine is dry. So this is beige and white mixed together. And I'm going over my layer on the right side and just adding this layer of beige, but leaving the left part of it that kind of rosy dark color. And then, so there's my beige layer. Without rinsing the brush, I'm going to wipe off some of the brush and grab titanium white. Just do a little white highlight on the right side of the nose. Next, I'm going to rinse and grab Mars black. I'm going to do a little bit of outlining under the mustache and under the nose. So right here, I'm doing these little, so outline the bottom of the nose, little tiny marks that are curving and going down because it's a little shadowy under the nose and it's a little shadowy under the mustache. So these are very thin black lines and I'm applying it very lightly. I'm only loading the black on the very, very tip of the bristles. I'm going to outline more of that nose, little tiny lines at the beginning and just under the hat area as well. I'm also going to add a little bit of brown on the bottom part of the hat, so a little bit of outlining. Rinse, and I'm going to touch up the brown on this hat. So I'm just taking burnt umber. I kind of wanted the left side of the hat to be a little bit darker and the right side to be a little bit lighter, so I just grabbed a little bit more of that dark brown and added another layer on the left side. Next, I'm going to paint the pant legs. So this is Phthalo Blue, and it's the only time the blue will show up in this painting, so you only need a little bit of blue. Have a clean, rinsed number 4 round brush, and we're going to paint the pant legs. So we're going to, for the most part, follow our drawing. So the leg is bent. forwards. So outline your shape and then fill it in solid. Keep in mind that we're going to go back over our beard and it's going to overlap a lot of this or some of it. So you can extend your pant legs over the beard with the intention that the beard's going to go back over it later anyway. So the left leg is just kind of going diagonal and it's a little bit curved. Next, let's load titanium white on our palettes or some fresh titanium white. And then before this blue dries, I'm going to do a little line down here on the bottom of the pant leg. So that's going to kind of create that bottom hem part of the pant. And a little curve on the right. Let that blend with your blue. It'll make a lighter, brighter blue, but just enough to give it kind of that shiny highlight look before the blue dries. And then Mars black for the shoes. So outline your shape, little strokes at a time, and then fill it in solid. And do the same thing for the other shoe. So this one's kind of angling back a little bit. The front shoe's a little bit more flat. This one is kind of at an angle because he's stepping. And then before that black dries, get your little white without rinsing the brush. Blend a little bit of light white on the right side of both of the shoes. Do a little line on the bottom for the heel and sole part of the shoe. Next, we're going to paint his sleeve, so we'll need a clean and rinsed number 4 round brush for this, and titanium white. So we're going to paint the entire sleeve solid coat of white first. So a lot of this is actually covered by the mustache part of the beard, mostly the mustache. And so we don't see the full rectangle. Yours might be a little bit different depending on the angle his arm is at, but it is going at a downward angle. It's a rectangle shape. And then I'm going to do the glove. So the glove is brown. I'm actually taking burnt umber, mixing some beige into it, but really you can just do solid brown if you want. And just outline your little mitten shape. I have the thumb going down on this. It's a very, very basic mitten shape. We're going to paint the plaid design next on the sleeve, and I would only do this if the white is mostly dry. It doesn't have to be dry all the way, but mostly dry, so that when you do this, it's not going to blend with the white. So I'm going to start with the round brush and Mars black, and I'm going to do a little row of squares. Notice the direction of the squares. They're going parallel with how the sleeve is going. So I'm leaving a little blank between both of the squares. So you might be able to fit 3 on yours depending on how your beard turned out. I was able to fit 2. And then at the very, very top of the sleeve, 3 more squares, and you're leaving a gap between each of those squares, and that's assumed that that's a white square. So you draw your little square, fill it in, and notice that there's a whole roll between where I did the first set of squares and second. I'm going to make some medium gray next. So it's about 2 parts white to 1 part black, pretty much the same color as we did the beard. And you're going to do a little gray square in between each of your black squares. So right here in this row, there's also a gray square between those 2 square columns, if that makes sense. A little gray square on this one. And this one, and then this one gets a gray square. And there's a little bit of gray showing here. And that's it. If you want to, you can take white and go back, and these are assumed that they're white squares, so you can go back and repaint that second layer if that helps. And that's how you do the plaid pattern. While we have white on our brush, I am going to go ahead and do the next layer for the beard and also do his little end of the sleeve. So this, just a little brush stroke that goes across the end of the sleeve. Little highlight as well on the glove. And then we're going to go back over the beard. So remember, our first layer is dark, and now we're going to layer on lighter color. But when we do this, we don't want to cover up all of that first layer. That first layer is our shadow layer. This is our next lighter layer. So I'm going to do this in a way where I'm painting kind of loose, curved paint strokes that are going in the direction of the hair. So they're all kind of curving and angling to the left. I want to be really careful where the blue pant legs are. I'm going to let that dry a little bit longer. I'm going to go back to the mustache, and I want to leave like a little dark kind of outline under the mustache so it doesn't end up blending in with the rest of the beard. But same kind of thing, light paint strokes that are kind of going diagonally to the left, but leave little bits of that dark still showing through. So I didn't take that white and I didn't go over the black area. In fact, I can take that and kind of re-outline that. And so I grabbed black on my brush just now, re-outlined the bottom part of the mustache, and a little bit down here where there's shadow, and a little bit under the nose where that shadow is supposed to be. And I'm going to attempt to do more white down here because I want the beard to overlap part of the pant leg like that. However, I don't want to drag blue into this because that blue is still not quite dry all the way. So we can come back to it if we want, or we could just be really careful not to turn it blue. See? And if that happens, that's fine. We can wait till that dries and just go back over with it later. But I did a little bit of texturing on that edge of the beard, and it's overlapping the pant legs. I'm grabbing a little bit of green with nothing else on my brush, and I'm doing a little bit of shadow. So this is going to make it look like he's not just kind of floating. A little bit of shadow on the ground underneath the feet, just enough to darken that little area. And next I'm going to highlight the hat a little bit more. So I'm going to take white and mix it with this beige. So that's like yellow oxide mixed with, I think, brown and beige were in there. You could just do white mixed with yellow oxide or white mixed with brown. And I'm just going to go on the right side of this and do like little curves on the right side of the hat, but leave the left side dark. A little bit more of that color on my brush and do the same thing for that bottom rim part of the hat. Next, I'm going to grab Mars Black and do the little handle. So basically, follow my drawing. If you need to adjust this and not go over your drawing, that's fine. Any leftover pencil marks will erase as long as paint doesn't go over it. So if it's still visible in the end, you'll be able to erase it. So I'm going to make that line go down, and then I'm going to paint the wagon red. So rinse the number 4 round brush and grab the Cadmium Red Medium Hue or whatever red that you're using, and then very simple, just paint your wagon in. It helps to maybe outline it first. The paint strokes, I'm going to make these go in a horizontal direction. So, but when you're doing the edging, you want to just kind of outline your edging, but then the rest of the paint strokes go horizontally. If it's helpful, you can use a ruler to help line this up as you paint it. For the rim of the wagon, I'm going to take titanium white and red on my brush. This is going to turn into a lighter red color. I'm just going to paint this whole top part. To do a little shadowing on the wagon, I'm going to add just a very dot of black into the red. So to make the red dark, just you need a very small amount of black. Mix that into the red, blend that at the top, and then blend that down. You notice I'm painting upside down. Sometimes it's helpful to just kind of turn your canvas different angles. It doesn't always have to be right side up when you're painting, especially when you want to get in there and do angles that are a little bit harder to do. A little bit of shadowing on the very bottom of the wagon as well. So only tiny bit of black is needed, and blend that in with the rest of the red. When you're ready to do the wheels, you can use the ruler to help line them up. I know that we drew them this way, so maybe you don't need the ruler, but still can be helpful. Also, my wheels, I'm going to push them down just slightly because of how my wagon ended up getting painted. I'm going to start the pumpkin next, and I'm actually going to paint the first layer of the pumpkin titanium white. I actually don't think this is super necessary, but I'm going to do this anyway, just so my pumpkin ends up being nice and bright. Because the background is already a light colored background, you could probably skip this step if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. So I like to paint pumpkins starting in the center and doing each little kind of ridge one at a time. And you're just doing curved strokes that go from the top down to form the pumpkin shape. I'm leaving a little bit of space on the bottom of the pumpkin because I don't want this to bleed into the red color, so I'm just kind of left that blank for now. So you're stroking all of these from top down, and you have the shape of the pumpkin all solid white. When that dries, we'll add color to it. And I'm going to take my white and go back and texture the beard a little bit more, especially where I wanted it to overlap the pant leg. So I'm actually going to start up here and do textured strokes that go outwards out of the shape. This is our top layer, and we don't want to completely cover all of our previous layers. Just very lightly apply this next layer of white. While things are drying, I'm going to start adding more of the details that are around the painting, starting with the corn plants over on the right. So this is really fun. I'm going to take Hooker's Green Hue. I'm going to darken it, add a little dot of green or black in there to darken that green, loosen that color a little bit with some water, and I'm still using the 4-round brush. So I'm going to start with a very dark green. I'm going to paint 2 corn plants on the right side of the painting, and it starts with a very thin vertical line using that dark green color, and then your leaves. So I'm going to start these leaves from the back of the leaf and stroke outwards, or stroke in a curved direction. You could start from the base and then go to the tip, but basically you're changing the pressure of the brush. So the thicker part of the leaf, you're pressing hard with the brush, and then you're releasing the pressure as it strokes down. The little corn leaf goes up and then it bends down. So then you paint lighter strokes when you want to do the thinner part of the leaf. And then on the bottom of the corn plant, little horizontal lines. And then paint the second one. And if you have room for 3, you can do 3. You can do as many as you want. I'm just going to do 2. So this one is a little bit higher than the one on the right or the one on the left. But same technique for the leaves. If you want to have fun and play around with the green, you can add a little bit of white into that or a little bit of yellow. I would caution about adding too much yellow into these leaves just because there's a yellow background already. Adding just a little bit of light green into some of those already painted leaves. It is just about brush control. You're pressing hard for the bigger part of the leaf and pressing light on the bristles for the thinner part. I'm going to paint the corn tassels next, and for this I'm going to rinse the brush. And let's see, this is a little bit of a challenge because we don't want it to match the color of the background, so we either need to go darker or lighter with these tassels. So I'm actually going to start with the darker green, what I was just using, and these are just little thin lines that go up and curve downwards. And then for the little pollen pieces, we're going to do beige and do like little dots. So we can dip just the end of our bristles in it's the unbleached titanium, and I'm also grabbing a teeny tiny bit of white so that it shows up. So these are just little dots over those green lines that we painted earlier that creates the tassels for the corn plant. Next, I'm going to paint the tree branch. So this is going across on the top part or top left part of our sky. And we can add some fun fall leaves on this branch as well. If you don't want to do the branch, you don't have to. You can do something else in the background. So I'm going to take burnt umber and my 4-round brush, and I'm just going to kind of sketch this out with the brush. It starts out whiter on the left, thicker on the left, and it gets thinner. And you can start painting it in solid. If you need to add a little bit of black to darken that branch even more, you can. I'm doing another branch that's kind of going down. So you want to do heavy pressure on the brush at first, and then when your branch goes thinner, you want to do light pressure using only the end of the bristles. Do a few smaller branches. I'm going to paint the pumpkin in next, and you want to make sure that that white layer is completely dry. And I'm loading yellow oxide to my paint palette, and really quick, I'm going to do little yellow oxide dots on the tassels of the corn plant. So I'm just going back over what I did, but these are much smaller dots than what I did earlier. And now for the pumpkin. Since I'm not using bright orange paint for my color palette, I'm going to actually make kind of an orange color. So I'm mixing about 3 parts yellow oxide to 1 part red. You do not need a lot of red to make this. And then take that color, kind of makes an orange color. Paint the center part of the pumpkin. So you want to start all of your paint strokes from the top and curve down. When you get to the bottom, you can get to as close as possible to the wagon. You can even just outline that bottom part flat if it helps. Then I'm going to paint the next pumpkin bump, but this needs to be a different color. So I started with adding a little bit more of the yellow to my brush, but it wasn't enough to be a different color. So I'm going to add titanium white to my paint palette and try that. So this is going to look lighter than what we just painted, and this is that little pumpkin bump that's next to this. You want to curve all your paint strokes and go all the way down to the wagon top without painting over it. And then your next one, we can change that color again. This one's on the left part of the center. You're doing your curved strokes starting from the top and stroking down. And then we have a set back here. I'm going to do these ones dark. So it kind of made a pattern of dark, light, dark, light. And then here, stroke from the top and curve down. I added a little bit of that dark on the top of those lighter ones, and now I'm doing a little bit of light on the top of these darker ones. And then there's 2 little bumps back here that are going to be behind the stem. Next, I'm going to rinse the brush and grab dark brown. I want to do a little bit of shadowing on the bottom part of the pumpkin. So I'm going to take my yellow oxide and mix it with burnt umber. And on the bottom of each of these sections of the pumpkin, I'm just going to lightly stroke upwards just to create some darkness in the pumpkin. You could even take your dark color and do the lines in between and then the stem. So the stem starts right here. Do your little base and then gradually build your stem up, and this twists to the left. We can leave it like that, but I decided I wanted it to curl and turn into a green vine. So I'm going to rinse and then use the green to do that. Hooker's Green Hue. It can transition with the brown and twists and go off. I'm going to rinse my brush and go back to dark brown and try to do a little bit of outline work between our little pumpkin areas, pumpkin bumps, but the orange is still kind of wet, so it's not really doing what I want it to do. I'm just basically taking that brown and brushing down from the top of the stem to make little division lines. And you can do it from the bottom too, but your line doesn't have to go all the way. So that kind of helps your pumpkin look a little bit more three-dimensional. We can even take some white and drag some white paint strokes from the top and brush it downwards. This is mixing with the orange that's already there. If this was dry, I would probably not use pure white. I'd probably mix white with some of that orange color so it's lighter. Can do a little bit of texturing on the stem. Next, I'm going to paint pumpkin leaves on the pumpkin vine. So we can do this very, very simple. Rinse the brush and let's use our green. You can even use some of that darker green that we made earlier. And I'm just going to do a little line and then just kind of drag little paint strokes outwards. Very basic leaf. I'll do another one down here. And just for fun, maybe there's one that flew off the stem. Or two leaves that have flown off the stem. So again, that's just a line and you're just dragging paint strokes outwards to form like a little leaf shape. Keep it very simple. I'm going to detail up the wagon a little bit more next now that the black wheels are dry. So we're going to do a layer of white next. So loading a clean brush into titanium white, and I'm just going to do a little circle on the inside of that original black circle. And since I still have some white on my brush, I'm just going to gently brush some white highlights on the top of the pumpkin. And then do some dark green. I'm going to rinse my brush to get this dark green so it doesn't turn light green. So the dark green little shadow under the wheels, just like what we did under the gnome's shoes for a little bit of shadow. And this is optional, but if you want a little bit of texture on the ground, we can do some grass blades or grass paint strokes, kind of going in bunches in different directions. I'm doing this with the dark green color. And next I'm going to do the little fall leaves on the tree. So this part is super fun. I'm going to take a clean number 4 round brush and start with the red and just do little dabs of color. And then we can use the yellow oxide. So like little and big dots all around the tree branches. Very, very simple. We could even do a little trail of leaves leading this way. Next I'm going to rinse, and I want to do a little outline on the top of the wagon just under the pumpkin. So I'm going to grab the brown, this is that burnt umber, and just a line that goes all the way across like that, just where the pumpkin is. Gives me a little bit of shadow and outline on the bottom of that pumpkin. I'm going to take red and do 2 very small red circles. This white one over here on the left wasn't completely dry, so it kind of blended in a little bit. The 2 red circles on the middle part of the wagon wheels. And maybe we can have a few leaves that have fallen on the ground. So we can take our same color and just kind of dab some fun pops of color on the ground. I'm going to do a little bit of highlight work on the wagon with titanium white. So I'm outlining the handle and the handlebar at the very top. A little bit on the wheel, so like a little curved line on the top of the wheel. On the left and the right side of the wagon. And a little bit on the top of the rim of the wagon. And I'm going to go back and kind of fix the wheel. I'm going to leave that black instead of have highlight there because I like how that looks when it's solid black. Pretty much the rest of this painting is just touch-ups and detail work. I'm going to go back and re-outline some of the corn tassels with dark green. And we do have to do our optional lettering on the wagon. So I'm going to write love or heart fall, and I'll do this with the black Posca paint pen. So if you want, you can draw this out with pencil or chalk first before you write. I'm just going to do a heart and then cursive lettering, fall. You can have this say whatever you want it to say. I'm going to do the heart solid black. And then one more final detail is the cute little sunflower on the gnome's hat. So I'm going to do Mars black for the middle of the sunflower. So I'm taking the round brush in black and just painting a little circle. I'm going to let that circle dry and take yellow and white and mix yellow and white together. And then do little sunflower petals. Again, this helps if the black is completely dry, then it won't drag in to the petals. But you're just pressing and letting go of the brush, pressing firm at first, letting go, and it creates the little petal shape. And this is a tiny sunflower, so you don't have to detail it up very much. We can have some fun, maybe add some of the yellow oxide in there. And then one more coat of yellow and white paint on top. And then when all the petals dry or are mostly dry, then you can go back and do your center. So I'm going to do that really quick. I'm rinsing, grabbing brown, bunch of dots in the center. And that is the conclusion of our fall pumpkin wagon. So off camera, I decided to re-outline this with white just to, maybe it stands out better, maybe not. That's it. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.